Will A, you are up next, sir. Hello, Will. What's going on? Hello.
Hi, Bart. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. How you doing?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Better than I deserve.
All
Okay.
right, well, should we get right in?
Yep.
All right, so we're playing 2-5 at Encore Boston Harbor. It's nine-handed.
A place that I would like to go to. 2-5 at Encore Encore in Boston. I mean, the only thing right now, even though they expanded their hours, is that my understanding is it's a battle to get in the game, right? You got to get there at the right times because it's still limited table access.
Correct. There's only 15 tables.
Yeah.
And I think about 4 that are 2-5, so you got to get on the list, honestly, before you start driving over.
And then is there any chance to get in the game in the afternoon or at night, or do you have to be there in the morning?
No, so I typically log on to the list at about 4:30, drive over at 5.
Oh, okay.
And I'm usually sitting down by about 5:30. So if you give yourself an hour buffer, I think you'll be
Well,
safe.
I mean, I'm sure I'll be over there. Like I said, I live right in between Chasers and Encore Boston Harbor. Of course, the thing with Encore Boston Harbor is they're not open on the weekends now. Right?
Although I've heard that's changing in the fall.
Okay. Right now, I think they might have reopened on Sundays, but they're not open Fridays and Saturdays. And what time do they close at? Do they extend it to 10 p.m. or something? Or
At 2 a.m.
Oh, they're open at 2 a.m. now? Oh, okay. Well, I could roll down there on a weekday night. Okay. 2-5 Encore. This is a 1K cap, right?
It is 1K cap, and it's playing pretty deep. So we're 900 effective, and I'd say the average buy-in to the game, people sit down with about $800. Okay, so under the gun +1 is an older guy, definitely not an OMC, but he raises to 15. He's called by a pretty young kid, looks a little bit like Harry Potter. I would have carded him coming in from MP1. The cutoff calls, and we're in the small blind with ace of spades, ace of hearts. So we 3-bet that to 80.
So 4x plus a couple of the calls would be like 9. Yeah, okay, so you go to 80.
Yeah, I could hear the argument for going as high as 100.
Yeah, I mean, if you went 4x plus the 2 calls, it would be 100, right? You've gone 3x plus the 2 calls, a little bit more than that. I mean, I tend to go a little bit larger from out of position. Where I would take the sizing if the effective stacks were shorter, just to sort of get you don't want to blow anybody out because then you're not basically folding post. If you had a couple of guys that were cold callers that were like maybe this dude opened to 15 off of like a $400 or $500 stack, then you had a couple cold callers. Now you don't want to go super high, right?
Right, and this was a pretty splashy game, so I think I could have gotten away with a bigger raise size here.
So up to 80 from the small blind with ace, okay.
And all 3 called pretty quickly.
Wow. All 3 call. So the pot is 320.
Yep.
You've got about 820 left in your stack, so it's 4 ways in a 3-bet pot, okay? And you've got 2 double flat. Double flats mean, of course, call and call, right? MP1 and cutoff. Double flatters, okay?
Okay, flop comes 10 of clubs, 9 of clubs, 9 of spades.
10 of clubs, 9 of clubs, 9 of spades. You've got the ace of spades and the ace of hearts, okay?
Correct, no club. And we lead for 105. So about 1/3 pot.
Yeah, this is interesting in the sense for this type of sizing because it kind of reminds me of a little bit of the first caller. The difference, of course, is the board is paired. When it was 10-9-7, the first caller, in a 3-bet pot cold called. Here it's 10-9-9. You still have that whole thing with the broadways, being, and there's a lot of draws out there. And then, obviously it's an issue of does somebody have a 9? Because if you've got double flatters in there, they're obviously playing way too wide, right? So you don't have really 9x, but they do. The theory goes in that spot, you probably can take a small size, or you're supposed to take a small sizing with a wide range. So, okay, so you go 105, yeah.
Yeah, exactly my thoughts. I didn't want to overcommit myself because I knew there were a lot of 9s in both of the overcallers ranges.
Yeah.
So under the gun +1, the original raiser folds, MP1 calls, and the cutoff folds.
All right, so MP1 calls with a guy behind. Fold. Okay, so pot's 530. Okay.
Turn, great card for us, deuce of diamonds.
Okay.
And we continue for 275, about half pot.
Wow. Interesting. Because I thought, a lot of times this gets checked here with sort of respect for the fact that the guy can have a 9 in a spot in a situation like this. 275, which is just over half the size of the pot. I mean, obviously, if it was like 10-9-3 turns a deuce, of course you can go large. He called and then double flatted. I would never want to blow somebody off of a 10 here. Now, if you're saying there's no way in hell a guy is ever folding a 10, even if he calls pre-flop with like king 10, queen 10 off, then fine. It's just my first thought.
Yeah. I hear where you're coming from. I thought 275 was still small enough that he would stay in with a 10. Mm-hmm. And that's obviously what prevented me from going way up to something like 80% pot. But yeah. I did with all the draws. I did not think that checking would be a good decision here.
I mean, the draws, yeah, you give up a free card to some of the draws, but then you also get maybe some floats to bet off. Although you look pretty strong when you lead here into 3 people. So, I mean, a lot of times if I'm MP1 and I have call with the draw, I will take a card instead of starting a bluff because you're so skewed towards value with the flop C-bet. I think some people agree with me in the live chat that they would check or bet a little bit smaller. But okay, so you go 275. And then what happens if he jams here? I don't remember what happens. What are you planning on doing?
I think without the ace of clubs, I have to call here.
And you think that he's playing like a delayed sort of semi-bluff on the turn?
Yeah, I think that's definitely in his range.
I mean, if he jams here, the pot will be like 11, and then you guys put in, 4? It'll be like 11, 6 to call or something like that. You're going to be getting about 2 to 1. Just doing some back of the paper math. Or 5 to call, like 11, maybe 1,200, 500 to call. Yeah. That's the other thing, too, about going large here is you might get pot stuck here. 2 on the turn.
Yeah.
So you go 275
and he calls.
Call.
And
I remember this hand. Yeah. Okay. So MP1 calls. So now the pot is 1,080. It's 10-9-9 deuce. You've bet twice as the preflop 3 better, and you guys have probably like just under 500 left in your stack, right? 480, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know if this was too ambitious, but part of the thinking around the sizing on the turn bet was that there would be about a half pot size bet on the river to show.
I mean, so you're going for stacks here, is what you're saying, basically.
Yeah, if we get another 10. If we get another blank.
I mean, you only have half pot size bet left, so yeah.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so moving on to the river. It's the 8 of spades.
So the river's the 8 of spades. So it's 10-9-9 deuce 8. And you have half a pot size bet left. So obviously there is some concern that completes one of the draws, or he was sandbagging something, right?
Exactly.
And now you have this whole thing where what should my play be on the river? Because if he busted clubs, might he bluff?
It's such a good bluffing card for him that I do actually check.
Well, I mean, this is where it's really close at half pot. I really think it's a really, really close spot because, and this is where I would sort of lean towards, this is why I remember picking this hand, where I would lean towards, in general, are my opponents bluffing too much? Or excuse me, in general, are my opponents not bluffing enough? And are they calling too much? Because one of the small stakes exploits guides always say is like, I'm not a huge fan of check calling the river in sort of even up to mid-ish to low stakes live games. The reason why I don't like check calling the river is because opponents don't bluff enough and they will call a lot of bets that they will check behind with if you check to them. So, for example, if this guy had ace 10, king 10, queen 10, he's just going to check it back, right? But if you bet, he very well might call. If he has clubs, you have shown so much strength here, though, that I don't know if he's going to bluff clubs. And in general, my case is that people don't actually bluff enough. And I don't even know if clubs are supposed to be bluffed here, to be honest with you. I mean, like, how often do you end up here with nothing? I suppose sometimes because it's a brick on turn, but you've just looked so strong through this entire hand here in the sense that you've bet the flop into 3 people. You 3-bet out of the small blind. You bet the flop. This is not a flop that we're in general betting like with ace, king, ace, queen with a ton of frequency. I mean, this is not a board of 4 deuce deuce where we might triple off or 7 deuce 3 rainbow. So you've bet the flop. You've continued to bet the turn. You look very, very strong to me. So I couple that with the general underbluffing sort of population here and the fact that people will call because they see other people in the player pool they might not bet 3 streets with an overpair here. They'll tend to call down. You've made the pot so that you only have half a pot size bet left. So it's 1,500. I mean, he's going to get 3-1 if you move all in. And I assume if you check and he bets all in, you're going to call. So I think at this stack depth and for those reasons, I jam here. Now, if it was the 8 of clubs where the front door came in and it completed everything, or like the king of clubs, then I would advocate checking most of the time to check fold to reasonable sizing. Say it was the 8 of clubs, right? Now we have a situation where, okay, we can check to check fold, but we'll sometimes win if it goes check, check, right? Because we'll win against the 10. But here, I think for those reasons that there isn't going to be that bluffing frequency. You're going to call anyways. I want to get value from a 10 here, so I'm going to jam.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that's why I think I've been thinking about this hand so much, because I had a plan and I deviated from it on that 8 of spades river, and I think that was a mistake.
So what ended up happening?
He checked behind.
So hero checks and villain checks behind, which means you're going to win, right? I assume.
I win and he mucks, and I don't know what he had.
So, I mean, he should have a 10 here, right? At least.
I agree.
I mean, it's not even like he really should never have jacks or queens. That should be 3. I mean, I guess maybe once in a while. So the question then becomes, well, does he call your shove with the 10? Could you bet 300? I mean, it's all about, you're never folding. So it's all about how much can you extract. The point is that I think for those reasons, the river is a value bet. You can debate on the sizing. That's because you took what would have been a larger sizing than some on the turn. Now, if you had gone like 150 on turn or check turn, say it went check, check on the turn and the pot remains 530 and, you guys have like around 800 left. I still think the river's a bet. I mean, it's not a crazy bet, but it's still a bet, for those reasons. So that's what I would just take away is that I think people at this level in general call far too much. They're not bluffing enough. And I think you look really strong. So the bluff's not going to really come in a spot like this. So anyways.
Thanks a lot, Bart.
Yep. Thanks for the call, Will.